Beyond Reason Radio.
So can the social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Apple with their podcast, Spotify the same way, Google, can these big tech internet companies, can these social media companies put the genie back in the bottle? You might wonder why I'm using that analogy. I'm going to tell you in a sec because that is the big topic of the day. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffe, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. And believe it or not, one thing that is beyond reason is we are on till 10 p.m. tonight. Special 2-hour edition of Beyond Reason Radio here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. We are on Facebook Live as well, so you can check that out. Just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. But it's like the old times where I was on 2 hours a lot. We are back on 2 hours tonight. And you just heard his voice a second ago, but producing once again, he's back. Mr. Rob, how are you, Rob?
Good. It's always an education to be on Beyond Reason.
It really is an education.
It is an education.
An education on what is beyond reason, right, of course, and an education on what is the truth. And actually, we are going to have a little bit of a history lesson. So I hope you're excited about that, Rob. Are you ready for history class today?
I love history.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big history buff as well. So good. Good. At least Rob's on board. I don't know if anyone out there listening is on board, but at least we know that Rob is on board. So the big story of the week, the top story on Drudge all week and other places, is the fact that Alex Jones and his website, his news outfit InfoWars, a lot of their content was removed yesterday. It kind of happened suddenly and all at once and by different big tech companies yesterday, by Apple, Facebook, YouTube, and then, of course, Spotify. They restricted the reach of Mr. Jones and InfoWars, his right-wing site that has been a leading peddler of false information online. If you don't, I mean, we all know who Alex Jones is. He's big on conspiracy theories. He believes a lot of the mass shootings are false flags. He believes 9/11 is an inside job and all of that stuff, yada, yada, yada. He was also a big fan of Trump. He was a huge fan of Trump. In fact, Trump used to be on his show a lot. So that is definitely playing a part in this. But now the social media companies are coming out and they're saying we can't have this stuff on the website. Now, what they're saying is that the reason why they're doing this is because of hate speech, that he's participated in violent speech and hate speech. They haven't been really specific on what the specific hate speech was or what the specific violent speech was. And they're banning a whole lot of stuff. So it's not like they just banned a couple episodes. It's most of the content on these platforms. Now, I want to start off by saying that I am not a fan of Alex Jones. Really don't like Alex Jones. In fact, I get really annoyed at a lot of conspiracy theories. I tend to believe the world is more chaotic than we want to believe. Conspiracy theorists, they like to believe that there's an order behind the chaos. So when something really bad happens, like a 9/11, it's easier for some people to wrap their minds around the idea that it was actually a government inside job. In a way, it gives them a sense of security. I think that's a part of conspiracy theories. But the biggest reason why a lot of these conspiracy theories annoy me is because, believe it or not, I've been accused of being part of conspiracy theories. Me and Bud have been accused of conspiracy theories type things. Yeah, Rob doesn't believe it in there. This is true. And this just shows it's such a great example of how this stuff happens. I'll give you two examples. One example is in 2012. We were getting on the presidential candidates the best we could. And we weren't able to get on Ron Paul. So Ron Paul was running in 2012, like he always does, Rand Paul's dad, for president. And we couldn't get him on. And I tried. I reached out to him. He didn't want to come on. Somebody accused me and accused the show, the morning show, Bud's show, of not getting on Ron Paul because we were being directed by Clear Channel not to have him on.
Oh,
We were being directed by the top of Clear Channel to not have him on the show. And that because, and both the conspiracy theories kind of tie into this, because Clear Channel at the time, was bought out by Bain Capital years ago. And that was a whole part of their buyout years ago. That Bain Capital is directing us not to get on Ron Paul because it could hurt Mitt Romney. So people actually believed that the reason why we didn't get on Ron Paul in 2012 is because we were being directed by Mitt Romney and Bain Capital, even though Romney wasn't even working for Bain Capital at the time, I don't believe. And we wouldn't get him on for that reason. Now, let me tell you something. The big bosses at the top of our company at the time, it's now iHeartMedia, used to be Clear Channel, they could care less if we get on. Let me tell you, they could care less if we get on Ron Paul. They trust me on this. They really don't care that much what our little rinky-dink station in the big scheme of things is doing. We are not being directed by corporate entities on the content of our show. The only thing that they direct us in terms of content is to do things like promote the iHeartRadio app or promote the iHeart Music Festival. Stuff like that. Yes, that's corporate directed. I will tell you that. But in terms of content like that or interviews like that, trust me, they don't care what we're doing. They are not directing us. And by the way, we had Ron Paul on in 2008 during the 2008 election. Bud had Ron Paul on that year. So the whole idea is stupid. Ron Paul just didn't want to come on. So that's the first conspiracy theory. The second conspiracy theory was somebody else saying that I'm being controlled by the Romney media. I wasn't critical of Republicans, I think, on immigration enough. And this must mean that Bud and I were being controlled by the Romney media. Once again, this connection to Bain Capital. To say these things, to not be negative on Republicans and all this stuff. I'm telling you, the bosses in this building don't care as much what we do. As long as we run the commercials, they don't even pay attention to most of the content on our show. You actually think the big corporate people in Sacramento are keeping track of the content and making sure we're positive about Republicans? No, but that's what I'm saying. That's how conspiracy theories start a lot of the time. That's why conspiracy theories annoy me. So, that's just kind of a quick aside, but Alex Jones is a guy who goes down these conspiracy theories. I don't like him. That being said, what is happening now by banning a lot of his content and everything, it's not so much what they're doing to Alex Jones himself that worries me. It's what is where this leads. Once again, it's the big picture. What is the future of all this? What is the next step? That's what's worrisome. Because there are two reasons why the social media companies are doing this. The first main reason is money. Facebook lost over $100 billion market value in a day last week. And a lot of that has to do, they wanted to blame it on Cambridge Analytica and the data breaches. Trust me, it's not the data breaches. Most people on Facebook don't even understand that stuff or care. The reason why they're losing so much money is because it's hard to monetize because people are turning off Facebook. Why are they turning off Facebook? I believe it's because of a lot of the negativity. I don't even like it as much anymore because it's so negative and a lot of the politics. So Facebook is trying to change the content on it because people are just sick of all of that and they want to go back to being family oriented. It's the first reason why social media companies are starting to crack down on stuff like Alex Jones. The second reason is also a big reason, though. A lot of people, the Democrats, and a lot of people on the left, which is the owners of all these tech companies, they're leftists. They're in Silicon Valley. Trust me, they're big leftists. They are putting forth this narrative, and a lot of them believe it, that the reason why Trump won, the reason why President Trump won the election is because of fake news, is because of outlets like Alex Jones putting out fake news, putting out conspiracy theories, and yet supporting Trump. They're putting out a narrative, and they have been. The Democrats have been doing that. A lot of the Democrats have been out there saying this. They're putting out a narrative that that's the reason why Trump won. And because They hate Trump so much and think Trump is such a danger to democracy and all this stuff. They have to start to control content onto these social media sites because they don't want someone like Trump to ever win again. But the problem with all of this is, where does this lead? Because we'll start with someone like Alex Jones, but then it's going to go to maybe some libertarians. Then it's going to start going to conservatives. Then it's going to start going to Fox News, because they're leftists out there. The people who control these companies are leftist. And they might not even realize their bias here, and they might not even realize they're doing it, but this is what happens when you start wanting to control speech for political reasons.
It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. A lot of this is over politics, and when you want to start controlling speech on these sites for politics, that could set a bad precedent. Now, some people have pointed out to me, and I already knew this, that technically it's not an infringement on their First Amendment rights, because it isn't the government doing this. It's the tech sites, and they own their sites, and they can do whatever they want. That is absolutely true. You are exactly right. Technically, this is not going against the First Amendment because it's not the government doing this. It's the private tech companies. And you're right. They have a right to do this. But here's where I want to go with this. If you've listened to this show any amount of time, you know I've talked about the divisions in this country, some of the chaos, and especially in politics in this country. And I've said I think a lot of it is because of social media. Because social media has given everyone a voice, including a lot of bad people. And it's kind of a lot of the division that started on social media is bleeding over to everyday life. Well, a lot of people got sick of it. They're turning off social media, and now the social media companies are freaking out. So they want to change it. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. I don't think they can. They're trying to change it because I've heard that social media is sort of the truest expression of free speech in this country. The truest form of free speech is the internet and social media. But it did create some chaos in our country because of that. And now you have these big companies who are saying this country can't handle it. We can't handle that much free speech. We have to start regulating it. We have to start putting it down because this could be dangerous for the future. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. I'm not sure they're actually going to be able to do that. I think it's already out and things have changed forever in this country. If Facebook and these tech companies try to do that, there's going to be competition and other platforms, because it was supposed to be just a platform. They weren't supposed to regulate content. That's not what their job was initially. It was just that it was an open platform, and for the most part, you could put what you want. Now they're deciding that they're publishers and they're going to try to regulate content. But I don't think they're going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle in the society. If it's not done on Facebook, if it's not done on these other tech sites, it's going to be done somewhere else. And the reason why I say this is, here's the history lesson. Going down to history class here. A lot of you know this, but 1450, the year 1450, that was the year that Johannes Gutenberg put out the printing press. That's when it started becoming operational. He invented the printing press in Europe. Now, believe it or not, the Chinese had their own form of a printing press for years, decades. I think actually hundreds of years, even before Gutenberg came out with his. But what the Chinese did for a lot of times is when they were printing stuff, it was only the elite who had access to it. So the government had control of it, and the elites would have control of it. And because there wasn't religion wasn't as powerful in China as it was in Europe, and Europe was a lot more fragmented, China was able to control that for a long time. But Gutenberg comes out with his printing press, and one of the first things he prints is what's known as the Gutenberg Bible. And this was revolutionary to the time, as you know, because most people at the time did not have access to a Bible. They did not have access to reading material. They were dependent on the hierarchy of the church, of the Catholic Church, to get their information about the Bible, about Christianity, about their faith. Gutenberg comes up, puts the printing press. He prints it in Latin, but they eventually start printing it in other translations, German, all these different translations. And that caused a lot, that eventually led to Martin Luther and the Reformation and caused a lot of division in the country. It is estimated by 1500 there were 35,000 separate editions of different books that had been published, which is some 15 to 20 million copies. So in less than 50 years, it just changed everything. It changed the world at the time. Now, shortly after Gutenberg came out with this, Pope Alexander VI, he issued a papal bull, a directive, forbidding the printing of any books in Germany without church authority, and ordered the three archbishops to control publications. So you had these Bibles being printed, you had people getting information they didn't have, and the hierarchy in the church, the Pope decided, no, we can't have this. You can't have this. We have to control this because the people, they can't handle the access to this information because that will ruin our power. We don't want to give up our power. We're the leaders. We have the power. We're the only ones who can interpret this. The common people can't handle this. So that's what the church at the time, the Catholic Church, tried to do. They tried to control the content. They couldn't because the genie was already out of the bottle. Once the printing press was there, and once these Bibles were printed everywhere, and once it was easy for the common man to have access to this kind of information, it changed everything forever. There was no going back. No matter how much those in power, the top, tried to control it, they couldn't. It was impossible. That's where I think we are with the tech companies today. These tech companies are trying to put the genie back in the bottle. They don't like that the common people can put out information that they want to and can go around these top broadcasting and top newspaper sites and top news sites. They don't like that. They're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. They're not going to be able to. The genie's already out. Things have changed. We as people, as a society, have to figure out how to deal with this, and I think we will. But I think things have changed forever, and I don't think the tech companies are going to be successful in this. That being said, what they're doing now sets a bad precedent, and it might encourage competition in the future. We'll see. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message data rates apply. Do you agree with me that they're trying to censor? They're eventually going to try to censor more political speech, most likely conservative speech, but they're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle completely, I think. And this goes back to another thing I want to talk about. And the media and the left don't seem to understand a lot of the appeal of President Trump. I'm going to educate them in a sec. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We will be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
So Senator Chris Murphy, who is a Democrat, tweeted this out about them banning InfoWars, Facebook and others. He said, InfoWars is the tip of a giant iceberg of hate and lies. They uses sites like Facebook and YouTube to tear our nation apart. These companies must do more than take down one website. The survival of our democracy depends on it. He says, I know Facebook and Apple and YouTube have gotten so big they sometimes seem like the government, but they aren't. They are private companies that shouldn't knowingly spread lies and hate. They took a good first step today by removing InfoWars. Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio, Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. Rob is producing. We were talking about what a lot of these internet companies, a lot of these social media companies are starting to do. They're wanting to regulate speech. And I truly believe that one of the biggest reasons they want to do this is they are pushing this narrative that President Trump won the election because of fake news on the internet, on social media. They are trying so hard to delegitimize Trump's win, his presidency. And that's one reason why Trump is so defensive over the Russia stuff. Too defensive, in my opinion. He's not strong enough on Russia. I've said that for a while. But a lot of that, I think, is because he feels this constant attack by the Democrats to say he really didn't win this election legitimately. It was fake news and all this stuff. So they're putting pressure on Facebook to stop that because they believe that will stop a future Trump from ever winning or from Trump from being elected. Because they can't understand why Trump won. They just don't get it. Well, I want to talk about some of the appeal of Trump because I didn't get it initially either. I was not a fan of Trump in the primary. But there's something that Trump does a lot, among other things. But there's something that he does that I think a lot of the media and a lot of the left don't understand that appeals to a large part of the American people in this country. But the left doesn't get it. And one leftist who certainly doesn't get it is Rosie O'Donnell, another crazy person, a crazy person who thinks someone else is crazy. But she was on MSNBC this week, and she was talking about Trump and how he shouldn't be president. Here it is.
He's a horrible, horrible human with no soul, and he has a very serious mental disorder. There are so many psychiatrists who are trying to get out the duty to warn. They wrote a book. This guy is in no means mentally stable enough to run this country, and he should be impeached, and every congressman who hasn't filed those articles should lose their job.
Now, also, Rosie O'Donnell has been saying, she's also been putting out the narrative that she believes the election was rigged in some way and that if it weren't for Russia and Russian meddling, Trump would not have won. This is a narrative they're putting out there. Trump is crazy. He should not be president. He should be impeached. And a lot of that has to do with fake news. That's why the social media companies are doing it. I think they're wrong. I think there is a big appeal to Trump that the left and the Democrats don't understand. When I was asking people during the primary, why do you like Trump so much? There were two things that they always told me. He's an outsider and he's not bought. Over and over again, I would hear he's an outsider and he's not bought. Trump has a way of appealing to a lot of the common people who feel disenfranchised by Washington and, frankly, by big business in this country. And he's good at it. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is when he was in Florida last week, a week ago today, actually, he was in Tampa. He was there to promote Ron DeSantis for governor. But there's a little part of something he said there. It's a couple minutes long, but I want to play it because this shows his big appeal. This part never gets any coverage. They think that Trump just is supported because he hates the media, which is part of it, but that we're just all angry, and Trump is angry, and we just have tapped into the anger. It's a small part of it, but there's something else that really appeals to a lot of Americans, and it's when Trump says stuff like this.
I am for America first and the American worker. We want to be a puppet for no one any longer. We're not going to be a puppet any longer. My only special interest is you, the citizens of the United States. I've had a great career. I've had a lot of fun. Even in Florida, I've had a great career. I've had a lot of fun. I've done great. I've done really well, beyond anything I could have ever expected. And then I ran for president with no experience, and I won. Isn't that interesting? But you actually won. You know, I told the story the other day. I was probably in Washington in my entire life 17 times. True, 17 times. I don't think I ever stayed overnight. You know what I'm getting at, right? But I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue. Again, I've only been here about 17 times. And probably 7 of those times was to check out the hotel I'm building on Pennsylvania Avenue. And then I hop on the plane, I go back. So I've been there 17 times, never stayed there at night, I don't believe. And then I'm riding down in this beautiful car, picked up at the airport by Secret Service, holding the hand of our great First Lady. And I look at her and I say, honey, guess what? I'm President of the United States. And I didn't know anybody in Washington, but now I know everybody in Washington. I know the good ones, I know the bad ones. I know the wonderful people, and I know the scum. And America now is winning again, like they haven't won before.
That kind of talk, whether you like it or not, or agree with it or not, has a lot of appeal to a lot of Americans. When I talk to Trump supporters, it's really stuff like that that appeals to them. The left doesn't understand this. They don't want to admit it. But when Trump says, I won, but you won. When he says, I'm not bought by special interests, I'm for America first. When he says, I've only been to Washington a few times, I didn't know anyone in Washington until after, that kind of stuff makes people feel like he's actually fighting for them. And when Trump is on Twitter, bashing the media, bashing other politicians, I don't like a lot of his rhetoric. But they feel like, wow, this guy's actually fighting for me, and he's actually willing to do stuff that other politicians were not willing to do. Whether it's right or not, he's willing to do it. That has a lot of appeal, especially to those in the middle of the country, and especially to the common worker who feels like they've been screwed either by big business or by Washington, D.C., or by the media. And that's a connection that's going to continue. And that's a big reason why Trump can win in 2020. And if the Republicans ride that Trump wave, they can win the midterms. Not saying it's a guarantee or anything. I'm not making any predictions when it comes to Trump, but I made that mistake before, but I'm just telling you that that kind of stuff has a big appeal, and I never hear anyone talking about it. I never hear anyone talking about that kind of stuff that comes out of Trump. They have all these other excuses for why Trump won. It was Russia meddling. It's all this other stuff. When he says you won, when he talks to the American people, when he talks to the crowd, and he goes to the crowd and they're cheering him and he cheers them and he says, you're the winners. It's powerful. It is. You can get caught up into it. Don't discount it. Discount it if you're on the left. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. There is one thing that's hanging over this country and hanging over the Trump presidency that he's going to need to address, that he really is not addressing. And it shows just how hypocritical a lot of the Republican Party is. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffe is back right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. This is your voice of reason, your voice of truth in a world of fake news. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. But don't fret if you've missed any of the show. Shame on you. You have to listen to all 2 hours of Beyond Reason. It's just one big tapestry of information. You can't just get parts and bits and pieces like most radio shows. Got to listen to all 2 hours. So what you want to do is search Beyond Reason Network. You can find it on iHeartRadio. You can find it on Podcast Addict, iTunes, or BeyondReasonRadio.com. And I also post other stuff. So I do a podcast sometimes that's up there. I co-host the Florida Roundtable. That's on the podcast stream as well. And I co-host Moment of Clarity. And when I fill in on Good Morning Orlando, which I'm filling in on Good Morning Orlando next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I will post those podcasts as well. So just search Beyond Reason Radio and you will find all of that and listen to everything as you should. So in the last half hour, we were talking about, one of the appeals of Trump is that he reaches the common person. He's still playing that he is an outsider. And that is so appealing in an era of where a lot of people feel disenfranchised. But there's one thing that his administration is not doing. They're not taking seriously, and they're not getting it right. And it shows really the hypocrisy of not only him, but the Republican Party. Listen to these stats here. The recent GOP tax cuts and bipartisan spending increases together will add $2.3 trillion to the national debt in the next 10 years. If both of those are made permanent, the amount goes up to $5.1 trillion. Not only that, but President Trump and the Republicans are considering more tax cuts, including on capital gains. These sums accelerate a coming fiscal freefall. I was getting this from, this was on Drudge, but also on CNN. Accelerate a fiscal freefall and will push the nation over a psychological barrier as soon as the next year, $1 trillion annual deficits, which we haven't had since the Great Recession, but we're not in a recession. More stats on this. It says in 2022, the Highway Trust Fund will run out of full funding. In 2026, the Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund follows. In 2032, the Social Security Trust Fund surpluses run dry, and all beneficiaries, regardless of age or income level, will face a 21% across-the-board benefit cut. Before 2030, we could have $1 trillion annual interest payments. Interest on the debt alone could be $1 trillion a year by 2030. This is because interest rates are starting to go up. We could get away with some of this debt for a while because interest rates were artificially low by the Fed. They are starting to go up because the economy is doing better. That means when you borrow money, you have to pay it back and you have to pay interest on it. And that interest could be $1 trillion a year by 2030. This is a serious problem. And I don't hear the Republicans. The Republicans were big on this during when Obama was president. Do you remember? 2010, the Tea Party, that was one of the biggest issues. I remember Republican candidates putting up the debt clock, saying we have to do this. Where is the debt clock? I haven't seen the debt clock in a while. Now all of a sudden the Democrats care about this, but we know what the Democrat solution is. The Democrat solution is to raise taxes and to cut military spending. It's always their solution to this. And that's what they want to do. I like the tax cuts, but I think the first priority of this administration should have been cutting regulations, yes, but cutting government spending, cutting the size of government. I see no real effort to cut the size of government. Very, very little effort. They're cutting regulation, they're cutting that, in that way they're cutting government. But when it comes to a lot of these government administration spending the actual size of government money-wise, I don't see an effort. I see them increasing spending. I see them not wanting to do anything with entitlements. And this is going to be a very, very big problem. And the Democrats are going to start using that against the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is not going to have a whole lot to say because they're going to be seen as the hypocrites they are for not addressing this. Now, Trump's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, he was on State of the Union, CNN State of the Union on Sunday, and he was asked about this. And he made some interesting points on this, but it's not going to be enough. Here's what he said.
Is President Trump ever going to try to reduce the deficit?
Yes, of course. Look, the effects of this economic growth boom are going to be a major important factor to this. Very important. The single most
right now, it's raising the deficit, though. Right now, the tax cuts are raising the deficit.
Sometimes in the short run, in order to invest in the economy, lower tax rates do yield lower revenues. I reckon it'll take us a year, maybe 18 months to start turning that around. It's not unusual. I look at it as a good investment in America's future prosperity and healthy economy.
So ultimately, you think it will be deficit neutral, if not reducing the deficit?
Some of the numbers I've seen, heaven forbid, even the CBO, they're suggesting we've already paid for 2/3 of the corporate tax cut. I think that by the end of this fiscal year, fiscal year 19, the corporate tax cut will be paid for. By 2020, it will be more than paid for. And, of course, we inherited a tough deficit situation. Anytime you have slow growth, the prior administration had a very slow growth period, okay? That really damages the budget deficit.
They were coming off the Great Recession of 2008.
And by the way, I give them that, always have, but not 8 years. That was the problem. They never got the snapback we should have gotten. I don't want to waste our time on their policies. You got a new sheriff in town with more incentives to invest.
Let's talk about the sheriff and his plans.
I do want to say, for Mick Mulvaney, our budget director, and President Trump, we are going to be tougher and tougher on spending. Okay, tougher and tougher on spending. That's part of the deficit calculation, as you well know. So I believe a combination of faster economic growth over the next bunch of years, Jake, as well as much tougher on spending, to get that deficit on a downward.
Okay, so a couple of things there. He said a few things there that I want to address. One thing he's saying, which has been a Republican line for a while, comes from the Laffer curve and the Reagan years, and he's exactly right. When you have tax cuts that will fuel economic growth, which is what's happening. The tax cuts are definitely fueling economic growth in this country right now. There's no doubt about it. The economy is booming, doing a lot better than many people thought, and the stock market's doing well. All this has to do with the tax cuts, the deregulation, among other things. But when you have that economic growth, it can pay for a lot of the tax cuts. So when the tax cuts create economic growth, that eventually brings in more government revenue, and that makes up for the tax cut, which could help get rid of some of the deficit. Here's the problem, though. The problem is spending is still way out of control and continues to be out of control. And this Republican Congress, including President Trump, are increasing spending. So they're increasing spending. So the tax cuts might pay for some of that, but it's not paying for nearly enough of that. The math isn't there. We're not going to be able to grow out of this alone. That's why Kudlow at the end of that said, oh, we're going to be tough on spending in the future. We're going to be tough on spending. I hope you're right. I don't know if I believe you. I don't see any real evidence of it. The only thing I saw was the Trump administration did want to put a rescission package on the last appropriations bill. They wanted to cut $18 billion. $18 billion. That's nothing compared to what the deficit is right now. They're going to have to take this seriously, and if the Democrats end up winning the midterms, it's going to be even harder to do that in any real way. I hope that they're right. I hope Trump gets serious on this. I hope the Republicans start to get serious on this, but I think this is the biggest thing that is getting in the way, the biggest cloud hanging over the Trump administration and the Republican Party right now, in my opinion. And this is going to be a big issue, and it's going to affect the future of this country in a major, major way. Now, that being said, there's something that some Republicans, not a lot, but some, are pushing for right now, which I cannot believe, because all these stats that I just mentioned to you about the debt and the deficit and the entitlements and all that stuff, something that Marco Rubio is pushing for is well beyond reason, considering everything I just talked about here now. And I'm going to tell you what that is. And we have a lot more to get to. If you want to call, you can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffe on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
So in the last segment there, I was just giving you some stats, and we go over some of those stats again of the problems with the debt, the problems with the deficits, the problems with entitlements. If we continue on to this current trend right now, here's what will happen. In 2022, the Highway Trust Fund will run out of full funding. In 2026, the Medicare Hospital Insurance Trust Fund follows. In 2032, the Social Security Trust Fund surpluses run dry, and all beneficiaries, regardless of age or income level, will face a 21% across-the-board benefit cut. Before 2030, we could have trillion-dollar annual interest payments, and that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all the problems with spending. So you have those facts right now, and you have the facts, but the Republicans don't seem serious at all for actually cutting spending. They want us to continue to increase spending. What's amazing is that this problem is easily solvable. You could solve this problem with one simple thing. All you have to do is freeze spending at current levels for the next 10 years, I think. Just freeze spending at current levels. because there are increases in spending every year. Just freeze it. I think $4 trillion is enough for the government every year for the next 10 years, probably the next 20 years. That's all you have to. You don't even have to cut spending. Just freeze it at current levels. And you'll solve a lot of this problem. Now, it won't solve the entitlement issue. The entitlement issue, and with Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, that's going to have to be solved another way, raising the retirement age or whatever. But when you talk about the entitlement issue, that's why what Marco Rubio is proposing right now, to me, is beyond reason. He is proposing a plan, which we talked about on the morning show, and I'm sure you've heard as well. He's been pushing this for weeks. And actually, believe it or not, this was originally pushed by Ivanka Trump, who has also been on the news pushing this. Ivanka Trump pushed this, and because of that, President Trump during the campaign also pushed it a little bit. So it's not just Rubio. Rubio's been big on this lately in the past couple weeks. He has a plan for basically the people to get paid family leave if they're not getting it in the private sector, if they're not getting it from their job. Rubio was on Fox News Sunday over the weekend with Chris Wallace, and this is his recap of the plan.
This is a big issue. It's a revolutionary idea, and it's going to take time to pass. Now, here's what it does. It's very simple to understand. Number one, it's an option. You don't have to do this. Number two, the benefit is comparable to what you're going to get in the private sector in terms of paid family leave for the birth of a child. And number three, the concept is this. If you choose to take paid family leave at least 6 weeks, up to 12 weeks, you can decide that some of your retirement benefits from your money in Social Security, you can advance it and take it now and instead of later. A portion of it. It's up to you. It's a choice you have. It's an option you have for the 85% of Americans that today have no options at all other than to skip paychecks. How many people can afford to skip one paycheck, not to mention 4, 5, or 6 after the birth of a child?
So Rubio right there is proposing the government to be able to give you a paid family leave plan. So if you're a company, if you have children and your company doesn't offer paid family leave, this is a way for the government to do it. Now, I will say it's nice that it's a choice. And I understand what Marco Rubio is trying to do here. What Marco Rubio is trying to do here is address an issue without creating a new entitlement. Because that's what the Democrats want to do. They basically want to create a whole new government program and fund it through higher taxes and more spending to provide paid family leave for men and women, believe it or not just women, but men as well, which to me is kind of crazy. But what Rubio is saying here is, well, we're not going to do that, but we're going to give into the premise of the left. That's what he is doing here. He is given into the premise of the left that it is the government's job to be involved in this. And that's a big problem I have here. That's one of these things a lot of conservatives do. They say, okay, we'll give into your premise, leftists, but we'll just do it a little bit differently. No, don't give into the premise. This isn't the job of the government. But what Rubio is saying there is, well, you can borrow from Social Security now and then pay it back later. I just went over the numbers about how Social Security, the trust fund's running out of money. How, and you're talking about more people, a lot more people taking from that trust fund today? Oh, yeah, but they'll pay it back later. They're going to take it from today when we already have this issue that we're not addressing? How can this be a good idea? I just went over the stats. I think, well, and I mean, there's other problems with this. I think, for one, it gives in to the premise of the left. So that means that if it opens the door for the government getting involved in this, and eventually they're going to create a new entitlement. Social Security will not be enough, and they will create a new entitlement. If this passes, you watch. Now, the Republicans, right now, this has no chance of passing, but the Republicans want to do it. But according to The Hill as well, a paid family leave proposal supported in concept by some Republicans would speed up the insolvency of Social Security trust funds by about 6 months, according to a study released Monday by the right-leaning American Action Forum. So they're saying it would actually speed up the insolvency of Social Security if we put forward this plan. They say it would do it by 6 months. I bet it would do it a lot faster than that. I just think this is not a good idea. by Marco Rubio, and especially now. I understand what he's trying to do. I like Marco Rubio. I like a lot of what he proposes. I understand a lot of what he's trying to do. But right now, when we have spending crisis and we have entitlement crisis, you're basically wanting to contribute to that crisis. That's exactly what you're doing. I don't think it's a good idea. Rob, it looks like you have something.
Oh, good hour. I mean, a lot of stuff. My head's spinning about that deficit. I mean, but I think the most interesting thing was the Alex Jones and his censorship. I mean, how can they get away with it? What difference? How is it different between what YouTube did to Logan Paul, the YouTuber, the kid, and getting completely off YouTube, and what they're doing to Alex Jones? And what's the difference?
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, one's political and one's not. And why can't he can just put a disclaimer on his thing that says this? Not everything might be true. It might be an opinion. It might be commentary.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, that's kind of what you get into when you go into political speech. That's the problem, because when you have these companies, they're going to police political speech.
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say they're going to say, well, that's conservative?
Sure.
And we're like, that's just our opinion. They're going to be like, no, that's fake news. We can't have that.
We know conspiracy theories bother you. They annoy you. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Q.
Oh, no.
Don't start
with the Q and the, oh, geez.
I'd love to hear your thoughts about the real conspiracy theories. Did we go to the moon? You were in Dallas. Was Kennedy shot? Was it a lone gunman? I'd love to hear all that.
We might get to that later in the show, because I do have some thoughts on the Kennedy thing, which a lot of people would probably disagree with me. I like having you come on at the end of the hour and talk about how you loved the first hour.
I'm here for you.
This is a great trend. We might even continue doing that. All right, we have one more hour to go here on Beyond Reason Radio, because we're on until 10 p.m. So stay with me through the break at the top of the hour, and we will be right back. A lot more to get to. Stay with me.
Beyond Reason Radio.
So this, according to Fox News, days of unprecedented protests aimed at Iran's sluggish economy, along with biting sanctions imposed by President Trump, are ramping up pressure today on the Islamic Republic's ruling class and causing many analysts to wonder if regime change could be on the horizon. Video circulating on social media purportedly taken from inside Iran shows thousands of protesters marching through the streets. In one video, crowds leave a soccer match and are heard yelling, "Death to the dictator! Death to Khamenei! Death to Rouhani!" Not death to America. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe, the voice of reason, the voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. If you missed any of the first hour, you can find it on the Facebook Live video later, and I will post the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. And, of course, it is the second hour, but that still means that we have Rob, who is producing tonight, and we have one more hour to go.
Ready for another hour of bigly goodness.
Bigly goodness.
It's all good.
I like that. I might steal that. Might use that for a liner or something. So the thing I definitely wanted to start with this hour is the big story. One of the big stories of the day is the fact that new Iranian sanctions went into effect today. Actually, Trump tweeted about it this morning, but it was known that this was going to happen today. Now, Iran, even before these sanctions went into effect, the country was already having economic difficulties, economic troubles. Remember, they are pretty much a socialist country. They're Islamic socialists, but they're still a dictator socialist country. They've had economic problems for a while. Of course, they don't know how to manage an economy. But this is going to make it much, much worse. And actually, there have been protests for a while, the past few months, against the dictators over in Iran. Now, the Iranian president and the Iranian dictators are trying to blame it on the U.S. They're trying to put out this narrative that it's the great state in America that's responsible for everything that's going on in the country. But the people are just not buying it anymore. And that's why I definitely supported what President Trump did in getting out of the Iran nuke deal. The Iran nuke deal might have delayed them getting a nuclear weapon. Some of that's still up in the air as well. But they were still testing ballistic missiles. They were still funding terrorism, and it gave them billions of dollars to do just that. And they were still doing a lot of bad stuff. This is going to up the pressure tremendously, and hopefully there will be some good out of that. Now, I just wanted to mention, though, I had mentioned earlier in the article that there were videos circulating of protesters denouncing the dictator there. Well, here's the audio of that. So that was it was kind of hard to hear because it was after a football match, or I guess a soccer match, but that was in Iran. And what they are shouting, they are not shouting death to America. They are not shouting death to the great Satan. They are shouting death to the dictator. That's happening in Iran right now. The pressure is definitely ramped up. The pressure is definitely continuing, and I think it's going to be a good thing. There might actually, can you imagine if regime change actually does happen under President Trump? That would be, I mean, you talk about foreign policy achievements. He's already had some foreign policy achievements, but that would be a huge foreign policy achievement right there. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But one thing that has come up in recent weeks, and a lot of this has to do with things that President Trump said, is last week, President Trump was asked if he would meet President Rouhani of Iran. And his answer kind of shocked a lot of people. This is what Trump said. Go ahead and play Trump.
So I believe in meeting. I would certainly meet with Iran if they wanted to meet. I don't know that they're ready yet. They're having a hard time right now. But I ended the Iran deal. It was a ridiculous deal. I do believe that they will probably end up wanting to meet, and I'm ready to meet anytime they want to. And I don't do that from strength or from weakness. I think it's an appropriate thing to do. If we could work something out that's meaningful, not the waste of paper that the other deal was, I would certainly be willing to meet.
Do you have preconditions for that meeting?
No preconditions, no. If they want to meet, I'll meet.
Now, there was some controversy in the administration over that because they asked Secretary of State Pompeo shortly after that if there should be preconditions, and Pompeo said, yes, there should be preconditions. So a little bit of controversy. I definitely think there should be preconditions, but there you have Trump right there. I guess we're going to make this a trend now where Trump's going to meet with all the people he doesn't like, but he said that he's willing to meet. Now, what's really interesting is this came out on CNN this morning. We don't know where this is going to go, but according to CNN, the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani issued a challenge to President Donald Trump on Monday, saying the Islamic Republic would welcome talks with the U.S. right now. Says, I don't have preconditions. If the U.S. government is willing, let's start right now. That's what Rouhani said in an interview. He said, if there is sincerity, Iran has always welcomed dialogue and negotiations. So there actually could be, although John Bolton, who is the national security advisor, told CNN Jake's Tapper that most of this is possible propaganda. Bolton said, let's see what really comes of it or whether it's just more propaganda. But he said that Trump has been consistent that he would be willing to negotiate with regimes such as North Korea and Iran. And that's very true. He actually has been pretty consistent on that since he's been president, because Trump actually, this is just how Trump works, and it comes from his business background. This is what he did when he was a real estate giant. He believes that by the power of his personality, that by meeting these people, he can affect change in these people, and he can get deals. He's all about making the deal. I just want to say this about possibly meeting with the Iranian president and meeting with maybe the Ayatollah. I don't know. I really, believe it or not, I really don't have a problem with Trump meeting with Rouhani. Just like I don't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with him meeting with Kim Jong-un. I didn't have a problem with him meeting Vladimir Putin. These are not things that really bother me. Now, I will say this. if he does meet the Iranian president, I really think we should get rid of some of the pageantry. When he met with North Korea, it was fine, but I didn't like the pageantry behind it. I didn't like seeing American flags next to the North Korean flags and the sort of big ceremony that seemed to come up with it. If we're really dealing with an adversary, we're dealing with an enemy, we're dealing with an evil regime, when you're meeting with someone like that, it really should be all business, I think. It should be all business. It should be serious business, and we go in there and say, this is what we want. It should be done in a neutral location, and get rid of all the pageantry. I just really think that was a huge mistake when it came to meeting with Kim Jong-un.
And the photo op. Get rid of the photo op. Just meet in business, eye to eye, and see what they got to say back and forth before you take all the photos and make it like it's a success.
Yeah, and see, that's kind of what President Trump did. I get that he's the salesman and he's trying to make the sale. You know, Trump is more of a salesman than anything else, and he's trying to make the sale. But I just think it just adds credibility to them and hurts our credibility. So, but that being said, I don't mind them meeting. It should just be serious business. The problem I have when it comes to that meeting that he had with North Korea is if they are not holding up to their end of the bargain. If they are not holding up to their end of the deal, because remember, President Trump and Kim Jong-un, they signed this paper, this statement saying that they were going to work towards denuclearization. So that means that North Korea needs to hold up their end of the bargain. The problem is North Korea is not holding up their end of the bargain. And if they are not holding up their end of the bargain after the meeting, then President Trump and the administration should come out after the meeting, come out now, and say and be tough on them again. Trump was really tough on North Korea in the beginning. He needs to come out now because they're not holding up their end of the bargain and be tough on them again. Because this is serious business. But because Trump is about the sale, Trump is about the pageantry, Trump is about making himself look good, he's not doing that with North Korea now. Now he's trying to sell it to the American people and to us that everything's great. You know, shortly after the meeting, when he landed in the United States, President Trump tweeted this out. He said, "Just landed, a long trip, but everybody can now feel much safer than the day I took office. There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea." There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. And Trump has been continuing this narrative. There's no longer a threat now. Everything's good. He had a tweet, I think last week, where he was saying, you know, there's been positive steps with North Korea. And kind of making it seem all positive. There has been some positive steps. They have given back some of the remains. They haven't tested missiles like they were. But we can't pretend that it's just all sunshine and lollipops now, that they're now our friends and there's no longer a nuclear threat, they're no longer a threat in the world, and they're no longer an evil regime. That's just not true. And I don't think there's anything wrong with meeting with a dictator like the Iranian dictator or Vladimir Putin or North Korea. The problem with Trump's approach isn't the meeting. The problem with Trump's approach is what he does after the meeting. He comes in after the meeting, and I guess he believes that the power of his personality has convinced them to change. And he comes in after the meeting and he thinks everything's all better now, but it's not. In fact, his national security advisor, John Bolton, who I was talking about earlier, came out this weekend and said that they are not doing enough, that North Korea is not doing enough to denuclearization. This is good. At least he's a part of the Trump administration saying this, but that they need to do more. John Bolton said, what we really need is not more rhetoric. What we need is performance from North Korea on denuclearization. It says it's just North Korea that has not taken the steps we feel are necessary to denuclearize. And a lot of the intelligence reports that have leaked to the press show that North Korea is continuing to build their missiles and continuing to build some of their nuclear facilities, that they have not stopped. And there was a chance that they weren't going to stop. So President Trump himself needs to come out and says, look, we had the meeting, we had this deal. North Korea needs to hold up to their end of the bargain because they're not. And if Trump did that, I think that would be fine. But now he's thinking, well, we had the meeting. It has to look good. I have to look like I won. So we're continuing. I don't think that's necessary. So if he wants to meet with the Iranian president, get rid of the pageantry, but also afterwards hold them to account. Say if they are not living up to their end of the deal, come out and say that. I don't know why Trump has such a problem with that. I don't think it would hurt him to do that. But that's where we are on that. So we'll see if a meeting actually happens. I don't know if it's as likely as the North Korean meeting. Like I said, one of the reasons I was a little more optimistic about the meeting with North Korea is I actually believe that Kim Jong-un, that there's a possibility that he wants to change. I don't know if he's as ideological as his father and grandfather. I don't know if he's as bent on communism. I think he just wants to be popular and wants to be loved by the world, as he showed at the Olympics. You know, he sent his sister to the Olympics and he sent the North Korean delegation to the Olympics and everyone all of a sudden loved North Korea. I think if you play on that, that could work. And Trump did that a little bit, so I was a little more optimistic. Iran is a different animal. Iran is ideologically based and religiously based in what they are doing. That's a lot harder to convince change in that way than it is, you know, someone like Kim Jong-un. So I'm not as optimistic as what would come out of that meeting, but hey, see what happens, be serious. And if they're not holding up to their end of the bargain, then say so. Doesn't seem that hard to me. Do you agree or disagree? Do you think he should meet the Iranian president? 407-916-5400, 407-916-5400 if you want to call, and you can comment on anything we are talking about, or you can text to 23680, of course, where standard message and data rates apply. Now, in something that's been going on with the Republicans and Trump is they've been touting the success of the economy right now. And they're using that. They're touting the success of the economy right now to try to win the midterms. And that's understandable. It's a lot of times it's economic issues that really wins elections. And I think there's a good possibility that will help them win the midterms. But there's something that Trump has been doing, which I've been talking about on this show a lot, that I think could hurt those chances. And something Trump tweeted out earlier this week that could hurt the chances of the economy doing as well as it could. Now, it's still doing really well, but there's something he's doing. And there was a piece in the Wall Street Journal from the editorial board that really, I think, did a good job of outlining a problem that I have. And I'm going to talk about that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffe is back on the air.
So I don't know if I can finish the show, Rob. I don't know if it's going to be possible.
What happened?
I had a drink out there. My big gulp was out in the hallway.
Oh, no.
And it was still like halfway full. And, you know, a lot of time in the break because I need to go out and, you know, put some fluid in the vocal cords and everything. I go out and I have a sip of my drink.
And it's gone.
And I walk out there and it's gone.
People have a job to do around here.
Where did it go? Who takes someone's soda? And they knew we were here. They couldn't have thought maybe that we were gonna still using it. She just threw it away.
Trudge on. You got to keep going.
Who takes someone's big gulp?
Who does that?
I mean, just I'm sure they do. They usually do a great job.
Oh yeah, back to Iran and the war and everything.
This is the war.
This is it, the war
right now in my mind.
The gulp is gone.
Who takes your big gulp when it's half full? I walk out there. I'm like, did I leave my drink somewhere else? I'm like, she threw away my drink. Why? Sorry. It just makes my job a little bit hard. I'm gonna have to drink water or something. Actually, I do try to drink more water.
Yeah.
Okay. So
just doing you a favor.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what she was thinking. All right. Welcome back to the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. Them throwing away my drink is a little beyond reason, but I will soldier on, as Rob said. So Trump tweeted this out. He had a tweet storm earlier this week, and earlier this week he tweeted this out. He said, because of tariffs, we will be able to start paying down large amounts of the $21 trillion in debt that has been accumulated by the Obama administration, while at the same time reducing taxes for our people. At minimum, we will make much better trade deals for our country. And I actually responded to this tweet, and I literally said, what? There is so much economic illiteracy in this one tweet by Trump. This is what I'm saying. The economy is doing really well. I love the deregulation. I love the tax cuts. I love what Trump's doing in a lot of foreign policy, getting out of the Iran nuke deal, getting out of the climate accords, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. I love a lot of what Trump does. But when it comes to his policies on trade, I just can't get with the guy. I try sometimes. I really try to give him the benefit of the doubt. Because if the goal is to get everyone to get rid of their tariffs, all their tariffs, that's fine. That's great. To have real free trade in the world, I'm totally okay with that. If the goal is to get China to stop their intellectual property theft, that's fine. And that's what, Larry Kudlow is saying and other people in the Trump administration are saying. And fine, I'm totally with that. But when it comes to this tweet, then Trump tweets this stuff out, and I'm like, what is going on here? He tweets out, because of tariffs, we were able to start paying down large amounts of the $21 trillion in debt. How? Well, unless you're saying that because of the tariffs, because a tariff is a tax, remember that. A tariff is a tax. It's a tax on you, basically, because it's passed on to you. It's a tax on goods. That's what a tariff is. So what Trump is saying is that an increase in taxes, you can call it a tariff, it's a tax, an increase in taxes will help pay down the debt, is what he's saying there. Okay, but I thought the goal was to get rid of tariffs. Are you saying that means the tariffs are staying for good? Or are you saying that you're trying to get rid of tariffs and that will pay down the debt? It doesn't make any sense. But then it gets worse in the tweet. Then he says, while at the same time reducing taxes for our people. Do you not realize that a tariff is a tax? So when you're implementing tariffs, you are not reducing taxes, you are increasing taxes. So when you say because of tariffs we're reducing taxes, that makes no sense. Because it is a tax. You're reducing it you have reduced it other places, but then you're increasing it here on foreign, because the tariff is a tax. So much of this is nonsense. Like I said, if the goal, which he has said sometimes and Kudlow has said, to get rid of tariffs is fine. I just get so many mixed signals from the Trump administration on this. I don't understand it. But the Wall Street Journal had a really interesting, the editorial board came out with a piece, and they had a really interesting take on this. The title of the piece is Trump's Political Tariff Bureaucracy. This is a real interesting way to look at it, because raising tariffs on goods hurts American consumers. It actually hurts American manufacturers, believe it or not, because a lot of American manufacturers, like Whirlpool, which found out, but other American manufacturers import raw materials from other countries. But not only does it increase taxes on the American consumer, but it also creates a new bureaucracy, a new regulation, which Trump, I thought, was all about cutting. But it actually does the opposite. Here's from the Wall Street Journal editorial board. I thought they made a good point. It says, tariffs are taxes which distort investment and limit growth. And like taxes, when tariffs are high, they create a political incentive for exemptions and favoritism. Behold the Commerce Department's new and torturous process for reviewing exemptions to steel and aluminum tariffs. This is everything Republicans typically claim to hate. That's right, a whole new bureaucracy, the Commerce Department, through this tariff policy, the whole new regulations coming out because of Trump's tariff policy. First, companies must submit a request attesting that their imports aren't made in the U.S. in a satisfactory quality or a sufficient and reasonably available amount. Companies must state that the uses for their steel product, their average annual consumption of the product, as well as the number of days required to take delivery, manufacture, or ship the product. They must also estimate the maximum minimum composition of 24 chemical elements in their products, including molybdenum, antimony, and vanadium. There are dozens of other queries, but we'll spare you. This is what happens now if you try to get an exemption to the steel and aluminum tariffs. Trump's created a whole new bureaucracy here. Thought he was about cutting regulations. This is expanding regulations. It says, and a separate request is required for each width, length, grade, shape, and form of steel or aluminum product. A single company, Primos Alloys, has submitted more than 1,200 steel product requests according to Commerce's database. All 14 that have been reviewed so far were denied. It says here, businesses may also submit statements to support the request, which naturally turn political. California Steel Industries write that our workforce is made up of about 50% minorities and 20% U.S. veterans. We pay excellent wages, yada, yada, yada. And they're using that argument to try to get around the tariff. So Trump has created basically what's happening here, and what the Wall Street Journal is saying here is by this tariff policy, by this trade policy that the Trump administration is implementing, they are making it harder to do business in this country. That is what we were against. That's what Trump says he is against. But that's the opposite of what is happening with this tariff policy. It was a way of looking at it I didn't think about before, because it creates this whole new bureaucracy. I already talked about it, how it hurts the economy and it creates a new tax. But it also creates a whole nother bureaucracy. Oh, good. More government. Don't you just love it? Let's take a call here, though. Let's go to Bob. Bob, what's your comment on this?
Yeah, my comment is, why buy anything from China anyway?
Because it's cheaper.
Well, guess what? I'm not cheap. Actually, guess what? It's cheaper, but the whole idea is, right, that it's ruining this country. Why buy from them?
I mean, you don't have to. Nobody's forcing you to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you would buy, but I wouldn't buy because you know why? I want to save this country.
How does that save this country?
Well, you say it's because it's cheaper.
And by the way, it's not just China. He wants to increase the tariffs on Canada and Mexico and Europe and all that stuff.
Guess what? That's right. Actually, guess what? America had the best manufacturing, and guess what? It's now more. But guess what? You buy from China and everything because it's cheaper. That's fine. That's where you are right now. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. I mean, it's economic illiteracy is what he's saying there. For one, we're not going to be able to produce everything that's in the world. We're not going to have all the raw materials. We're going to have to import it from other countries, and our manufacturers use that, just like we export a lot to other countries. And they get that. That's how trade works. It doesn't ruin this country to be able to get a product cheaper somewhere else. The idea is that, well, we're losing manufacturing jobs to other countries. The fact is we're losing most of our manufacturing jobs from technology, from new technology. The fact is manufacturing output has increased under a lot of these trade deals, believe it or not. And the fact is the economy is helped overall. But when you have protectionism, when you're protecting certain industries, you're also protecting their bad motivations. So a lot of the American industries that are facing this so-called protection, they're going to increase their prices, and you'll have less competition. That's what the tariffs do. They get rid of a lot of the competition. But world trade has been in existence in civilization forever. You're not going to be able to get rid of it. And protectionism doesn't work. It's not how it works. When you trade with a country, they're not stealing our wealth. That's what Trump says. When you trade with another country, they're stealing our wealth. No, we're getting a product. It's a trade. You give them money, we get a product. Just like when you buy from a store. You give them money, we get a product. Not only that, but we buy those products with American dollars. Because they're American dollars, these foreign countries, they take those American dollars and they reinvest it back in the United States because they're American dollars. Thomas Sowell had a great piece on that. He's been pointing that out for months now, and a lot of people don't understand that. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. So there's been a lot of talk on this so-called 3D printed gun debate. A lot of talk on that. I want to give you some facts on that because there's been a lot of misconceptions over what this means. And there's people that I like, including Bud, who I kind of disagree with where they're going on this. They like that the judge is preventing this. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We're going to get into that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, Well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
The Big Gulp conspiracy continues. It's a conspiracy. It's what it is. Somebody here doesn't want me. They want to ruin the show because I'm giving so much truth, so they made sure that my Big Gulp was stolen from outside, so I couldn't get my Big Gulp.
Now that's Alex Jones.
Yes.
That's making something out of nothing.
I got people you can watch the show on Facebook Live. I had a couple of people commenting on that. Said, not your Big Gulp. It says, it's tough, but you can get through this. Then another person says, it's a conspiracy. The Big Gulp conspiracy.
The humanity.
Where's Alex Jones when you really need him? I know, I'm telling you. I don't know. Something's not right here. So one thing that has been a matter of a lot of debate in recent weeks is this case over the idea of someone being able to print 3D guns. So everyone knows what a 3D printer is now, where you can use plastics, metals, or whatever. A lot of companies have it. I've seen it work. It does it layer by layer, and you can make almost anything. They think in the future that we'll all have our own 3D printers, and a lot of the products that we use in our home, we'll be able to just print it in our home and use it. Or manufacturers will start using it a lot easier. It'll be interesting. But somebody, and this was years ago, posted the blueprints that you can use on a 3D printer for a gun, basically gun parts. You still have to put it together. But gun parts, he called it the Liberator, but gun parts to be 3D printed. And the gun would be made mostly of plastic. Now, what happened was there was a settlement in the case where eventually this went to court and everything, and eventually they made a settlement with the person, with the company that put out these 3D printed guns, where he was allowed to do it. The argument was the reason why he's allowed to do it is because it's his First Amendment right. He has a First Amendment right to put out these blueprints on the internet. Now, a lot of people are afraid that this will set a precedent, that the terrorists, the criminals, everything else will be able to get guns without any kind of background check, any kind of regulation, any kind of anything. They'll just be able to get the guns, and there'll be guns run rampant and crime run rampant in this country after that. The terrorists will get it, and so forth. Now, a lot of that would be speculation for the future. I mean, these 3D printers are extremely expensive. You still need other certain parts to put it together. It's quite a process. The technology isn't really there to streamline this too much yet, but the fear is in the future it will be easy to do. Now, the person who did this, his name is Cody Wilson. He was on Fox News Sunday over the weekend, and he did a long interview with Chris Wallace, and he was talking about this, and he made an interesting point about this, and actually he's exactly right. Now, a judge has recently this week put a temporary restraining order on him putting these blueprints on his website, but it looks like that might be overturned eventually. But he was asked about this, and this is what the person who came up with these blueprints said on Fox News Sunday.
This is also their discovery that it's been legal in this country since its founding to make a gun for yourself. Well, I'm sorry that you just found that out. Okay, but you should have made a law, right? Your Congress, make a law. Make it illegal to make guns in this country. I'd like to see that.
But they did make an Undetectable Firearms Act, which passed 30 years ago, Cody.
Right, and look, it's legal to make a gun if you include a requisite amount of metal in it. And Chris, this is why I'm not in jail today, right? My printable guns had the amount of metal in it. There's security norms. I respect the norms. Of course, maybe even that type of law ultimately couldn't survive Second Amendment scrutiny, but I'm not here to argue for or against our security norms. I'm literally here to argue that what I won in court over 5 years in the Western District of Texas was the right, and not just singularly, but all Americans have the right to share data for making firearms on the internet. This is not controversial. The progressive case, the H-bomb, nuclear plans, these are all protected by the First Amendment. I'm sorry that some people are just waking up to the idea that the First Amendment protects scientific inquiry that doesn't advantage, the gun control movement?
So a lot of the Democrats out there were screaming about this, saying something has to be done. And then President Trump actually tweeted about this and said something has to be done. It doesn't make sense. They were screaming about this. How could this be legal? They're going to put the guns in hands of terrorists and all that. There were so many misconceptions about this debate, some things I didn't realize about this debate, and one of them is what he said there. And he's exactly right. You have been able to build a gun in your own house since the founding of this country. You only are required to have background checks and serial numbers if you sell it or if you buy it from someone. But you have been allowed to build your own for a long time. In fact, people do that now. There are amateur gun builders that do this on their own property, and it is perfectly legal. Not only that, but there's so many other misconceptions. And one person who has really been on the forefront of this is David French in the National Review. He had a great piece in the National Review on this, going over some of the misconceptions. And he talks about some of the falsehoods that have been out there, and he's exactly right. This is one thing he said. He said, one of the claims is downloadable guns are a real thing because of the Trump administration. False. 3D printed guns were illegal regardless of the outcome of the case, and plans for 3D printed guns were widely available online. Yes, believe it or not, even though the judge restricted this one person from putting his plans out there, if you Google it right now, you can easily find plans for 3D printed guns. They're out there. It's already out. You can't stop it. He says individuals will now be able to log on to a website, and if they have access to a 3D printer, print fully functional and totally undetectable firearms. That was another claim that the Democrats are making. I'm reading from David French. He is exposing a lot of the myths around this. He said that's misleading as well. He said the word now is deceptive. Individuals were able to do this before the Trump administration settlement, and they would have been able to do this even if the Trump administration kept litigating the case. Moreover, it's important to note that possessing totally undetectable firearms already violates federal law. So when you have a 3D printed gun, by law, you have to have some kind of metal in it so it's detectable. And that's a part of the plans that he put out, Cody Wilson put out. It's already a law. But people already create their guns. Let's see, another claim by the Democrats. All of this is because the Trump administration quietly settled a lawsuit with Cody Wilson. False, as the Fifth Circuit clearly stated, manufacture and possession of the plastic pistol or plastic lower receiver is legal for United States citizens and will remain legal for the United States citizen regardless of the outcome of this case. It says multiple states are now suing on their own, hoping to replace the Obama administration's prior restraint with one of their own. And he says this, he says, news for a lot of these people, 3D plans are still widely available. Just because these one 3D plan isn't out there, there are lots of other 3D plans out there. They've been widely available, he says, and it's odd to refer to the plans as an existential threat to our state when the original justification for the Obama administration's action was concern over arms exports. He says this, he says, my own view is simple on why the media and the Democrats keep putting this out there. He says, for critics of gun rights, details don't matter because the gun debate is less about policy. It's less a policy debate than it is a cultural conflict. The Trump administration settlement isn't so much an outrage on its own terms as it is a vehicle for a different argument, a broader argument against gun culture. And in the broader attack on gun culture, other essential American liberties must be sacrificed, including freedom of expression. Prior restraints on free speech are a small price to pay when gun control is at stake. It's exactly the point here. But the point he is making here is there's a lot of misconceptions over the debate. But here's the thing that I want to say. Okay, let's say they ban forever this one person from being able to put out his plans for a 3D printed gun. There's no way you're going to be able to ban all of them. The genie's out of the bottle, as I've talked about on another issue in the first thing. The plans are out there. It's easily able to get it. Second, let's say you can somehow get rid of all the plans on the internet for a 3D printed gun. All you need is still they're not going to make it illegal to get a 3D printer. So if you have a 3D printer, you can still design your own plan. So, like, say terrorists want to be able to make guns with a 3D printer in the future, but they can't get access to the blueprints. Trust me, they'll be able to get access to someone who knows something about guns, and they'll be able to design their own plan. My point on this is they're not. I don't think you can stop this. The Democrats are freaking out about this, and I think mostly it's a political issue because right now they believe being anti-gun is a winning political issue for them. And maybe it is for a lot of Democrats. I don't know. But you're not going to be able to, I don't think you can stop this. I think once 3D printers are out there and they're widely available, people are going to be able to do this whether you like it or not. Now you can make it illegal after the fact, but there's a lot of gun laws that are already illegal that people break every day. And right now, it's probably easier to get a gun illegally, buy it off the street, than it is to have it 3D printed. But eventually, I don't think you're going to stop this. And my point in saying that is why we need the Second Amendment. One reason why we need the Second Amendment. Because when you make laws that, restrict buying guns, it's usually the people, the law-abiding citizens, who are restricted. So when you have these gun bans, you are taking guns out of hands of the good guys, not the bad guys. And when this 3D printing technology comes available, it's going to be a lot easier, whether you like it or not, for bad guys to get a hold of guns. That is why the good guys need to be able to have guns, because you're not going to be able to confiscate all the guns in this country. And once 3D printed guns are available there, you're not going to be able to stop it. You're not going to be able to stop it. So if you're not going to be able to stop guns from being in this country, at least then law-abiding good citizens should be able to defend themselves with their Second Amendment rights. By making all these laws, all you're doing is taking it out of the hands out of the law-abiding citizens. But there's still a lot of misconceptions on this. The fact is, you have a freedom of speech. You're not going to be able to stop the blueprints from getting on the internet. And the fact is, it's already illegal to make untraceable guns. So if someone did that, they would be doing it illegally. It might not stop them. But what are you going to do? Ban 3D printers? You can't. And there's already a bunch of plans out there. And most of this is a freedom of speech issue. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. I'm going to take a break and see if maybe I can find where my big gulp went. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffe. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back to the show. And we have covered a lot of different topics. I wasn't even able to get to everything I wanted to get to today, but we have one more segment to go because we're on until 10 p.m. right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. If you miss any of the show, and catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. And I really appreciate you joining me. I appreciate all of the fans and anyone who supports this show, because without you, I got nothing, because I definitely don't have any money. So all I have is when they let me have an hour or 2 hours, I take it and hopefully get some support from you. But make sure to follow me on Twitter. So the last thing I want to get to here real quick is there's been some controversy over something Trump has said, and now Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, has said recently. And that is, this. Go and play Rudy for me, Rob.
4 months. They're not going to be colluding about Russians, which I might even know if that's a crime, colluding about Russians.
Okay.
You start analyzing the crime. The hacking is the crime.
That certainly is the original
crime. Well, the president didn't hack.
Of course not. That's the original.
He didn't pay them for hacking.
And as you know, it has led other places. The meeting with the Russians.
If you got the hacked information from the Russians here at CNN and you played it, would you be in jeopardy of going to jail? Of course not.
So there was a lot of controversy there because basically he said collusion's not a crime. Then Trump also tweeted out recently and also said collusion is not a crime. And people are saying that they're kind of changing the narrative from there was no collusion to now saying that collusion is not a crime. Now, this is not new. As I said before, other people have been making this argument, including Alan Dershowitz, who's been on Fox News a lot. And this is, from months ago. He's been making this for months and probably a year now, that Mueller probably doesn't have anything because collusion's not a crime. So they're looking into collusion, but they would have to get Trump on something else. Here's what he said on Hannity.
And now they're going after very, very weak issues. Collusion. I challenge Mueller to tell me what statute is violated by collusion. There's a memo now by Rosenstein authorizing him to investigate collusion with the Russians by Manafort. But you can't investigate sins. You can only investigate federal crimes, and there is no such federal crime as collusion.
So he's making the point that there is no crime. Now, I heard Judge Napolitano on Fox News yesterday and today try to make the case that maybe there is a statute that would be considered illegal collusion. And he was talking about the Trump Jr. meeting in Trump Tower, which Trump has admitted now that they knew that was going to be about finding dirt on Hillary Clinton. President Trump says he didn't know about the meeting, but he said Trump Jr. knew that it was about getting dirt on Hillary. Judge Napolitano thinks this could be bad for Trump Jr. This is what he said.
So here's what the statute prohibits. Federal law prohibits the receipt by people running a campaign of information or anything of value from a foreign person, entity, or government. It prohibits soliciting that, and it prohibits agreeing to solicit it. The agreement is called a conspiracy, an agreement to do something wrong. So there's three potential crimes here: soliciting the information, receiving the information, or agreeing to receive the information.
So he's basically saying that because Trump Jr., even though he never really received information in that Trump Tower meeting, because he agreed to that information, that could be seen as illegal under the federal statutes he was talking about. So there's a lot of different debate, but I wanted to point out both sides. But I just wanted to say that what Judge Napolitano said might not necessarily be settled. There's a great piece in the Washington Post where it says, can it be a crime to do opposition research by asking foreigners for information? Now, what the federal statute says, that foreigners who aren't U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents, the argument goes, are barred from providing candidates anything of value. Judge Napolitano is saying that information like that would be something of value, and that then would be illegal that Trump Jr. took that meeting. Now, does that mean that Christopher Steele, because he's a foreign agent, he was providing the dossier to the Hillary Clinton campaign, is that something of value? And then that would also be illegal?
We don't have another hour. We only got a couple of minutes. That's a whole nother story.
So that was something that's been raised because technically that means the Hillary Clinton campaign was getting info from a foreign entity. But I wanted to point out here that it's not settled that information would be considered something of value in terms of that federal statute. Usually when they're talking about something there, and the whole reason that federal statute was put in place has to do, and the article lays this out, and I don't have time to go through it all, has to do with receiving money or something, some kind of physical wealth to help the campaign. Because what they made the law because they didn't want people, foreign entities donating money to campaigns, so you're beholden to foreign entities and it's corrupt and all that. It's not settled yet that Trump Jr. receiving the information is illegal. So I wanted to point that out because Judge Napolitano is saying maybe it is. Other people are saying it is. What is a problem, though, is Trump Jr. testified under oath that his dad did not know about it. If they have proof that President Trump did know about the meeting, then Trump Jr. would face perjury charges. None of this might not necessarily hurt President Trump other than the political ramifications. But
talking about support, looks like someone set up a GoFundMe page for Yappy's Big Gulp. You've got 89 cents.
Yes!
89 cents.
Woo!
Yappy's GoFundMe page.
I appreciate you listening to the show. If you miss any of the show, check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. And, I'll catch you guys next time.